Again, I would like to welcome you to today's session, Advanced SQL Server 2005 Reporting Services. I'd like to introduce today's presenter, Brian Welker. Brian is a Group Program Manager for Microsoft Corporation. And without any further delay, I'll turn the floor over to Brian.
Thank you, Tracy. Today we're going to talk about some tips and techniques for SQL Server 2005 reporting services, some advanced topics that you may not have run into during your working with the product. So hopefully this will be an informative session and give you some things that you're not currently aware of in the product. If you're familiar with reporting services, you know that it's part of the SQL Server 2005 Business Intelligence Platform. Reporting services is, in addition with integration services and analysis services, is about bringing data from your operational systems, integrating it, adding business value, analyzing the data, data mining, and then presenting that to your end users in a very large-scale way. So reporting services is really at the end of the business intelligence chain. Today we're going to cover some of the new data sources in SQL Server 2005 reporting services. We had a set of data sources that were released in the first version of the product, and we've added several more in 2005. And I'll talk a lot about today working with analysis services data. Analysis services support is one of the new features that's in 2005 reporting services. So if you're working with reporting services and analysis services together, you'll get some tips there. We'll talk about end user sort, one of the new features of 2005. And we'll talk about some report parameter techniques, parameterizing reports, parameterizing multi-valued reports, a couple different techniques there. First thing I want to give you is an overview of the different data sources that are now supported in 2005 reporting services. In the first version of the product, we ship support for SQL Server, OLADB, ODBC, Oracle, and an extensibility model that allowed you to add other .NET providers. In 2005, we've added support for SQL Server integration services, SQL Server analysis services, including data mining models, XML sources, report builder models, and SAP R3, aka also known as SAP My SAP Business, or shoot, I forgot the name of it, but basically the R3 system. Coming in 2005 is support for SAP BW, also known as SAP NetWeaver BI. So that's coming in the Service Pack 1 for 2005. To be out fairly soon. First thing I'm going to talk about and show you is integrating integration services with reporting services. One of the new features of 2005 is the data generated by an integration services package can be consumed by a reporting services report. Now by default this is not enabled in reporting services, so you have to make sure integration services is installed on the machine and you edit the report designer configuration file to uncomment the extension entry. If you're familiar with the reporting services, you'll know that each data extension has an entry in the configuration file, so you have to install that one. So when you build your integration services package, you have at least one data flow task, one connection, and a data flow destination. The package also has contained a data reader destination, and that contains the columns that you want to use in your report. So instead of writing directly to a database or the file system, the package simply writes into this data reader destination. And then you can use the SSIS processing extension. Now there are some security limitations with the RTM version of integration services that limit its usefulness in server-side scenarios for reporting services, specifically around stored credentials. We will be addressing that in a future service pack, but just be aware there'll be some documentation around that coming out in Service Pack 1. So let me go ahead and we'll do a demonstration of using integration services packages. Hopefully everyone is able to see my screen here. First thing I'm going to do is show you the integration services package. I've already opened it up, the project up here, and we'll take a look at it in the editor. It has a simple control flow, just a single task in the control flow. So let's go into the data flow to see details about that task. Now I'm not going to go through all the details of the package, but what this package does is it reads in from an RSS feed, so an XML feed, and then it does a term lookup. So it's looking for terms that we might be interested in that RSS feed. So we've got a database of terms, and we're going to do a lookup based on how many times those terms have appeared. And then based on the frequency of those hits, we'll assemble a data set. Now the most important thing from a reporting services standpoint is this data reader destination adapter here at the bottom. So we're going to open that up. Bring up the editor here. And you can see it has a name. The name is called RSS. And the input columns to this, which will be the output columns of the report, are the title, that's the article title, a link to the article, a description, the term that we found in it, the number of times that term was, frequency of that term, and the publication date. So these will form the input columns to our report from the other side. So now if we run this package, we're just going to say execute package. It'll go out to the RSS feed, which is, as I said, a web service. Pull in the set of articles, do the aggregate values, and then we can see here as the package is running, down at the bottom here, 19 rows are returned. Now we're just running this in debug mode, so what we're going to do now is stop the package, switch back into design mode, and I'm going to add a new project to this solution. And we're just going to use the report server project wizard. Now before I do that, actually I need to grab the location of the package because I'm going to need that later. So we're going to go ahead and grab the full path to the package. And that's basically going to form the connection string in my report. So we're going to add a project, use the report server project wizard. And for our data source, we're going to say we want to use SSIS, the integration services. And for credentials, we'll just use Windows Authentication. Now the connection string is actually the command line arguments that are used by the dtexec command. So if you're familiar with integration services, the command line tool, you'll see that these /f says this is the location of the file that we're going to run. So we're going to, the name of the query itself is just simply the name of the destination. So we just need to put RSS because that's the, if you had multiple data reader destinations, we would need to pick one of those. Pick a style for the report here. And we'll add some items to the table. We're just going to do a simple report. We're just going to add everything to the details. Pick a color. Pick a deployment location. And we'll go ahead and preview that report. So it'll drop us into report preview. And as it's previewing the report, as it's running the report, it's executing the DTS package, the integration services package, coming through and then just returning a list of everything that it found. So I don't have a count here, but you'll see there's about 19 different articles here in the report. So it's fairly easy to hook up an integration services package. Of course, I could publish that up to the report server. I'd have to make the package available on the report server as well. I'm going to switch back to the slides. The next data extension I'm going to talk about is the XML data extension. And with XML sources, you can either have URL addressable XML, so simply an HTTP address or HTTPS that contains at the end of it an XML document, or you could use methods on a web service as a report data. Unfortunately, we didn't have time to do a graphical designer, so it is a little bit tricky to use. But if you're take a look at my blog, I've got a listing later. There's some hints on how to use the data extension. Now if you've got parameters for the URL or parameters for the web service method, those are just available as query parameters and they're mapped in for you. And then all of the attributes and the text value elements are returned in the data set. So whatever comes out of the method is returned as fields in the data set. Now, since XML data can be hierarchical, there is a default flattening algorithm that's used. So basically, we find the first sort of deep branch and return that. Optionally, you can return an expression as part of the, you can specify expression as part of the query that we'll use to flatten the output. So you can, it's basically an XPath expression. It tells it what path to use for the data set, the base row in the data set. The next data extension I'm going to talk about is the report, and show you actually, is the report model data extension. Reports can reference report models published to the report server. Now, if you're familiar with report models, you know they're the metadata that's used for Report Builder. Hopefully you've got a chance to use Report Builder and use the client tool. But one of the nice features is that you can also use those same report models as data sources in your Report Designer reports, which is very useful for importing Report Builder reports, and I'll show you that just in a minute. So you can navigate the model, you can add fields, you can specify filters. Basically anything that you can do in Report Builder, you can also do within Report Designer. And then you can import a Report Builder report into your Report Designer project and then use that to customize that report or publish it as a drill-through report. So let me actually switch over. We'll do a quick demonstration of creating reports on Report Builder models. So I'm just going to shut down this solution. So if we take a look at Report Manager and launch Report Builder, you'll notice that there's one model here that I published to my server. I'm going to launch Report Builder. And that model is called AdventureWorks. So we'll go ahead and bring up Report Builder. So you can set the list of entities in AdventureWorks. Let's take a real easy report. Let's just go look at products. And the products, we might want to know their subcategory and their category. And let's see, the color. That's a good. So this is a good report. And we'll just run this report to get a list of all of our products. So you can see Report Builder, fairly easy to generate the product report. Take a second to come up. Quite a few products in the database. Oh, that's odd. Oh, I may have done something bad in my report, but hold on a second. Let's go over and take a look at the model. So the model is what's behind the Report Builder report here. So we look at the AdventureWorks model here in Report Manager, and we're using the AdventureWorks model here, which is right. And if we take a look at the data sources, AdventureWorks, and I'm actually going to use Windows Integrated Security here instead. Oh. So let me show you what that looks like in the Report Builder, in the Report Designer. So we've got a new report project over here, and we're going to add a shared data source here. So we're going to add a new item, and we're going to say add a data source. And for the data source type, we're going to pick Report Server Model. And the connection string for the Report Server Model is server equals, this is the address of my report server. And then the data source property is set to the path to the model. So we'll say models, AdventureWorks. Now we do have to specify credentials, so I'll say use Windows Authentication. So now we've got our shared data source, and I'm just going to add a new report here. Pick that shared that standard data source. Use the query builder. As you can see here, the query builder for the report builder models is very similar to what you'd see in report builder. And so we can pick a list of employees, and let's only pick a certain set of employees, so we'll filter out employees other than in the group North America. So when we run this query, you can see that you're going to get back a list of employees there and their email address. Now there is one way that the extra column here over in column 1, that's actually the unique identifier for employees. Since a report builder has the concept of entity IDs, that's returned here in Report Designer. So now that we're happy with our report, and you actually see what happens in the query is this big XML structure, which is the semantic query here. Now that's not exposed to you at all in the report builder, but it is here in the designer. So we'll just pick our tabular report, and we'll go ahead and preview that. See here, building a report off of a report model is pretty easy here in the designer. And I get the full flexibility and power of the report designer, but off of a report builder model. Now the other thing I might want to do is actually go and import a report from the server. Import a report that's built in Report Builder. So let's go ahead and save this report. And I'm actually going to save this and make it a drill-through report. So we're going to call this Product Details. And so we just say new. Get a table here. So make sure we've got a valid report here. Product and product category. Ooh. Something's going wrong here in Report Builder, but I'm going to go ahead and save this report anyway. Hopefully it'll work for me. So we're going to say Report Properties. And we're going to set a special property on the report that says allow users to drill into this report from other reports. So we'll say OK there. I'll call this Product Details. And instead of saving this up to the server, we're going to save to a file. So we're going to bring up Save to File, and we're going to save it here on my hard drive. So let's call this Product Details. So now that we've saved that report, we can import that into the report project. So I'll just say Add Existing Item. We'll pick that report there. So we'll open that up, and you can see here that this is the report that I built in Report Builder. You can see all the functions here. Now when I go to the Data tab, what it's going to say is, hey, we didn't find the data source, so I need to associate that report with the existing data source there. So we're going to say select that and use the shared data source here. So now you can see here the product name, category. Now when I actually try to run the query, what it has is two parameters here. One for the drill through source query and the drill through context. And these are used when I'm going to use this as a target of a drill through report. So by default, when I'm browsing the list of products and I want to get details for that product, it will come here. So we can go and do any layout things we want here. So let's go ahead and just do some trivial changes. But I could add graphics. I could do whatever I wanted to in Report Builder. We'll just save this one as a purple here. I'm actually going to publish this up to the server. So we're going to say deploy. So deploy is going to publish it up to the server there. Now you will have to do some cleanups on the names of the links here. So you will have to go through the source of the report here and change. It says there's a non-existing data source 1 here. do a quick replace. Data source 1, 11 with source 1. And then we'll switch back out here. Reload the report. And then we should be able to deploy. I have to go up to the server real quick. So we're going to set the target server here. We'll host report server. And we're going to publish this in a folder called drill through. Everything goes well. So the deploy started. Now if we go look here, we've deployed our folder called drill through, and it contains our product details report. Now the last thing I want to do is associate that drill through, that details report, with an entity in the model. And to do that, I use Management Studio. So we go over here to Management Studio, and I'm already connected to the report server. So if I refresh here, you can see I've got that drill through report there. What I'm actually going to go do is go to the model, and you can see the AdventureWorks model here. I'm going to bring up the model properties. In the model properties, there's a tab over here called the drill through reports. And so what it does is for any entity within the model, you can specify the drill through report. So for example, I come up here, I say I want to get a list of products. I can either say this is the drill through report for the single instance, that is a single product, or for a list of products. We'll specify the single instance, and we'll pick our drill through report called product details. And that's it. Now that's associated with that model. Now if I go out and rerun here, launch report builder, pick the same model, and hopefully we'll be able to get a list of products here. So name and subcategory. Well, something's wrong with the report builder on this machine, but that is how you set the drill through report for the item details there. Switch back to the slides. The rest of the talk is really going to focus on integrating SQL Server analysis services in a variety of ways, both from an MDX perspective, from accessing the queue, but also from a data mining perspective as well. There is a new designer support for MDX parameters, member extended properties, and server aggregates. We'll talk about all three of these features through the demonstration. The first thing I'm actually going to do is show you how to build a report off of both a data mining as well as analysis services queue. Switch back to the demonstration here. So I'm going to go back to my report designer, close out a couple of these extra reports, and add a new project data source. So we'll add a new data source. And for this data source, we're going to set it to use an analysis services data source. And I'm going to edit the connection string, my local cube. I'm actually going to use a data mining model called call center models. And what call center models is a data mining model which predicts who's going to buy things from my bike shop here. So we'll say OK. We'll use Windows integration, integrated security. So data source 2, and I'm going to add a new report. And we'll pick data source 2. And when I launch the query builder this time, you'll see this is the data mining query builder. So the data mining query builder allows me to select the model. And the model simply is the model or algorithm that I'm going to use for this report. So I'm going to use a model called Target Mail DT, and that's based on past buying experience, past buying data, who predicted who's going to be someone that's going to buy a bike in the future. So here's our mining model, and now we're going to set the input tables. And this is the case data that I'm going to feed the model to determine, let's say I bought a product list from a mail order house. So based on characteristics of those folks, I'm going to see whether they're going to be probable buyers. So let's get the case table here. We've got a view there. And what it does is it matches up between the model and the input tables. Now I've done some work beforehand so everything matches up. And so what do we want to know about these potential customers? Well, we want to know, let's say we get the customer key and their first name and their last name and then a phone number so we can give them a call. And then the last thing we want to know is actually what the probability that they're going to buy something from us. So let's go and say we're going to use the prediction function. So prediction function. And the prediction function we're going to use is called predict probability. And let's call that prob. And the prediction probability is going to predict the bike buyer attribute. So this is a flag as to whether they were a bike buyer. So we're going to predict whether they're going to be a bike buyer in the future. And to one precision here. So now if we see the results of this, actually execute the model. And we can see here that these customers and their probability to buy something. So about 40% here, 37%. Now, since it only makes sense for us to go after sort of the most probable customers, we're going to switch back to design mode. And I'm actually going to take a look at the query itself. So this is the data mining query. And in this query, we're actually going to only select the top 50 customers. So we're going to say top 50. And we're going to order that by this probability column. So down at the bottom here, we'll say order by and descending. So we want the top 50 ordered by the probability. So if we did everything right, now we're only going to see folks that are pretty sure that they're going to buy a bicycle from us. So we've got our query here. We'll return to the editor, turn to the wizard. Once again, just pick a table here, and we'll go ahead and finish preview. And see our report. So probability and other customers who are probably going to buy something. So you see it's easy to build a report off of a data mining model. I'll close that out, create another shared data source. And this time I'm going to use analysis services again. But instead of going after the data mining model, I'm going to go after the AdventureWorks cube. So we're going to say AdventureWorks Data Warehouse. And we're going to build a new report. We'll go ahead and start with the wizard again. And one of the things that we did that you can look forward to fix in Service Pack 1 is we did fix the wizard using the report wizard against analysis services. There are some issues with the RTM version of 2005 reporting services, and those have been fixed in the upcoming Service Pack. So we're going to pick data source 3. Now the query builder this time, because it's against a cube, is a little bit different. We can see here that we're taking a look at the cube information. So let's go say we want to see sales summary, and we're going to see sales amount, how much people are buying, and then we want to see the employees and how much they're buying. So this is, whoops, I don't want that sales amount. Go and see reseller sales. So for each employee, how much the resellers are buying from that employee. So we've got our MDX statement here. Use a simple table again. Add to there. And actually, for each employee, I'm actually going to go back. I'm going to get a little bit more data here. I'm going to go get the products that they're selling too, the categories of products. Let me get one more thing here. So for employees, what categories they're selling. So we'll go and we'll group by the employees and some of the details categories. And we'll finish. Now we'll preview, take a look so we can see for each employee the reseller sales amount. Now one of the things that Analysis Services allows you to do is use parent-child hierarchies. So I'm going to switch this report over and actually do a parent-child layout. So to do that, I'm going to look at this group. So the report that it built had this group in it. And instead of grouping by, I'm going to say two things here. So I'm going to edit this group. And instead of grouping by the employee value, which is the name of the employee, I'm actually going to go in and group by something else. I'm going to bring up the expression editor. And here's where you'll see where custom properties come in. So these are all the properties that are enabled on this particular member. And instead of grouping by the name, I'm going to group by the unique name, because that's actually the fully qualified name in Analysis Services. Now, it turned out that employees were uniquely named, then you're not going to see any difference. But it'll be important when we're setting up the parent-child hierarchy, because I'm actually going to set the parent group as well. And we're going to set the parent group to fills blank employees dot parent unique name. So that's the name of the parent in the hierarchy. And we're going to go ahead and add a total here at the top and do a little formatting here. So let's preview this report. So you can see here the data now is in hierarchical order. So Ken Sanchez, actually I'm in the database, I report to Ken Sanchez. You can see these numbers here. Now it's a little hard to see when you're basically not grouping here. So we're going to go ahead and indent these things, and as well as do some show hide here. So let's indent the employee names. And to do that, I'm going to go into this text box and set the padding on this. So let's go and say the format, the left padding. And to do the left padding, I'm going to build an expression, and I'm going to use the employee, use another custom property called the level number. So in parent-child hierarchies, the level number is returned. So I'm going to take that, multiply it by 10, and then append PT on the end. So 10 points for each level that the employee is under the parent. Now we preview. You can see here we've got some indentation here. So Ken Sanchez and Brian Welker, we all report to Ken. You can see the hierarchy. I'm actually going to go in and set some show hide here. So I'm going to go in and edit the group and set the visibility to be hidden, and then the visibility can be toggled by the employees there. And we're going to go ahead and get rid of this row here just to make things a little bit simpler. Just going to prune it down to what we need. So we see Ken Sanchez, drill down, see Brian Welker, we see all of our direct reports at an indentation level here. So fairly easy to use the hierarchies. Now one of the things that you might want to do also is use a measure. We're going to add another measure to this report. But instead of using just something that aggregates easily, we're going to use a different measure. So we're going to use the aggregate value. Actually, I'm sorry, I'm out of order in the presentation. We're going to see that in just a minute, but we're going to hit back to the first one, head back to the slides for just a minute. A new feature in SQL Server 2005 reporting services is end-user sort, and this is the ability for you to build a report that allows the user to resort the data after the data has been retrieved from the database. So they're looking at the data and they see the indicators that allow them to be able to resort the data. And this resorting happens without having to do a round trip to the database. We're not issuing database queries to do the sort. It's really resorting within the report execution itself. And it also supports both multi-column sort, so I can sort by multiple fields within the report, or I can also do a nested or group sort, so I can sort details or sort by the values themselves. So let me go ahead and show you an example of that. And to do that, we're going to build a new report. I'm going to go ahead. We're going to leave this one here because we're going to use it later. So we're going to build a new report. And we're going to use that same data source. And for this report, we're going to see, let's see, let me make sure I have my sorting here. So we're going to add reseller sales, we're going to see sales amount, and we're going to see by sales territory group. And we're also going to see regions within groups. So within regions and groups, we're going to see sales territories.
Brian?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to pop in.
Oh.
All we're seeing is the demo slide.
I'm sorry. There we go. I forgot to switch over. Sorry about that. Let me just catch you up here. All I did was add a new query to the report from the same data source there, and then built a query just with a couple of fields, and we're just going to use the wizard again. And I'm going to add this to the group, add these to the details, include the subtotals, and finish. So when I get this report out initially, it just shows groups, regions, and sales amount. I'm going to go ahead and format these as currency so they're a little easier to see, and make the fields a little bit bigger. So I'm going to add some sorting here. And by default, I'm going to go into this properties here and click on the interactive sort tab. And the value that I want to sort by is the name of the territory of the region. So you can see here, I'm clicking on territory, and I want to sort the details by territory. I'm not going to worry about these right now. I'm going to do the same thing for the other text box here. So go over to interactive sort and expression. This time I'm going to sort by the sales amount. Now it's just going to use the scalar value here right now because I'm going to sort the details. By default, all of the sorts happen at the detail level. So now when I preview, so you can see here that I've got these two indicators here. I can do sales territory, so sort by the name of the territory. So France comes up, now UK comes up. So within the groups, it's sorting the names of the regions. I can also go over here, and you can see I'm sorting the amounts here within the groups. So sorting the values within these groups. Now, you might also want to be able to sort not only the details within the groups, but the groups themselves. So let's go back to the layout here. And to do that on reseller sales, I'm going to come in here, go back to the properties page, and go over to the interactive sort tab. And so now we're going to sort at the group level. And to do that, I'm going to say I want to sort by the sum. So because we're at the group level, we're going to sort by the sum. And I'm going to say that I want to choose the data for which this is evaluated at to be the group level. So this dialog box is a little bit confusing. I think I've got a blog entry on it. Actually, these two text boxes are sort of reversed. The group to sort is actually on the bottom, and then the sort expression evaluation is at the top, unfortunately. So the text is not really very good. So I'm going to choose that I want to sort at the group level. And I'm also going to go on this text box and actually set that to go ahead and continue to sort at the details level. So we're going to go in, interactive sort, sort by the sales amount, and we'll just use the detail scope. So now when I preview, we've got another item here. So watch when I click on the reseller sales amount. It's going to sort by the groups by the total, the sum for that group. So we get specific, Europe, North America, and then North America, Europe, Pacific. So within the group. Or I can sort at the instance level. So I've got this text box here. You can see here the groups within here are sorted by region, and then they're sorted by region descending. Now when I stick the sort indicator at a repeating item, so in this case at the group header, you'll see that each group has its own group header. Now you can also set it so that you can sort all of the details by a single toggle. You could have a text box either outside the scope of the report or in the header and sort all of the details, or you can set it to sort each individual group. So the flexibility is up to you. Of course, I can go and then sort the other region as well. Switch back over to the slides. Next thing I'm going to talk about is report parameters. We had support for parameters in SQL Server 2000 reporting services. We've added some support in addition for for multi-valued parameters. So that's something new. You can see here on the top, and the ability to have a date picker as well is something new that's in 2005. The ability to support selecting dates from the drop-down. So let me go ahead and show you some parameter techniques. Quick demonstration. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to this report, and we're going to go back to the Data tab. Now adding parameters in for analysis services data sources. Whoops. Strange. Open that report back up. Oh, that's not right. We've got a little glitch here. So I'm going to build a new report really quick. I'm going to add a new report. I'm going to recreate that report real quick. I'm running a beta of Service Pack 1, so apparently we've introduced a new bug. So let's go ahead and get the reseller sales. I'm going to grab that same sales amount. We're going to still do geography and sales territory, and we're going to see group and region. Now this query, I'm actually going to do a filter here. So I'm going to go up and select the product category, and I'm going to drop the product category into the filter up here. Now if I just wanted to pick a specific one, filter it here in the query, I could do so. I could pick a specific product. I'm going to default to all products, and then I'm going to parameterize this query. So if we switch over to take a look at the MDX, we'll see that there's a new element here, which is this string to set at product category. This is a new ability in SQL Server Analysis Services 2005 that allows you to parameterize the MDX. So we can see here product category. Now when we select this to be parameterized in the report, what's going to happen is that we're going to generate a report parameter. So let's go and take a look at the report parameters. And you'll see that there's a new product category report parameter, and it gets automatically set to a data set, a newly created data set that lists the product categories. We also default them to multi-valued, so all analysis services parameters get to be multi-valued, and then we pick the default that you've picked there. Let's go ahead and build a real quick report here. We'll drop a table on and grab our data sources. And we're just going to see, let's see, we'll just do group, something really simple, region, amount, bold and underline these. We're also going to add the display of the parameter up to the top here. So this is one place where if you want to take advantage of some of the new features of 2005, you need to be a little bit careful. Because parameters are now multi-valued, you can't just return the parameter value or label and expect it to be bound into a text box. So we're going to grab a text box here, put it up at the top, and in the text box I'm going to use an expression. And the expression is going to use the .NET method join. And join takes an array of objects and creates a single string out of it. So I'm going to join fields, oops, not the fields, I'm going to join the parameters. We've got one category, and we're going to use the label. So we're going to take all of the labels and join them together and separate them with a comma space, and put that at the top of our report here. So now when we preview the report, you'll see we get our category selector, and then we've got all products there. So if we want to do all products, we want to do clothing and bikes, view report. You can see bikes and clothing here in the text box at the top of the report here. Let's go ahead. We'll do some formatting here. I'm going to set up a drill through from the first report we built. So I think this is report number 2. No, report number 3. Yep, report number 3. Add our table details back. And use the insert a column, put in our category, put in our reseller sales amount. Make sure this is still working for us. So we see all of the drill down here. Go back to the report. I'm going to set this to format again. And what we're going to do is set up a drill through on the category to go to that last report we built, which is report 5. So I'm going to go into the properties here and set the navigation. I want to say jump to report number 5. And for parameters, we're going to say the product category. Now, in the normal report, previously in 2000, you might have thought, well, I'm going to drill through on the value of that product category. So whatever is displayed in the report, I want to use that as the drill through value to bind into that product category parameter. But instead, I'm actually going to create an expression. And because that target report is a multi-valued report, as well as it's an analysis services report, instead of drilling through on the value, we're actually going to drill through on the member unique name. So we're going to say fields, bang category dot unique name. So that's going to bind on the entire unique name of the member. So in this case, all products, product category, whatever the product name is. Now, as I said, if you want to pass through, for example, if you've got a set of properties here, so let's go and we'll drill through on unique name. If you also wanted to pass through a set of values, let's say this report was parameterized by a set of years, and you wanted to parameterize the target report as a set of years, you can also pass those multiple values through. So I'm going to pass a single value here, but you can also pass multiple values as well. So let's preview this. So now if we want to drill through and see only components, we'll drill through. You can see the category here is components, and you can see, I can obviously switch, go back, drill through on bikes. You can see here we're only seeing bikes. So some of the tricks that you need to consider when you're using analysis services. The last thing I want to talk to you about is something called server aggregates, and we're just going to create a new report to show you that one there. Add a new report to the project, and create a new data set. use our data source 3. I got the designer here. So in this case, I'm going to build a simple report, but instead of using an additive measure, let's say I wanted to use a non-additive measure. So let's go and say I want to see reseller sales, and I want to see, instead of the total sales amount, I want to see the average sales amount. And let's go and say we want to slice this by product category, and we'll go through calendar date. So let's go calendar year. So for each calendar year, we're going to see the average sales amount. So this time I'm going to drag, put a matrix on the report, and we'll go ahead and put categories on the rows, calendar years on columns, and reseller sales amount in the middle. So preview the report. Very simple matrix report. Now one of the things though is that you don't necessarily, especially when you're aggregating data, you don't want to necessarily just add things up. You might have analysis services measures that are non-additive. For example, let's go and do, grab another member here. Let's go do product subcategory. Come back to layout. We'll add a category, subcategory. So now we've got a big subcategory here. So what you want to do is, instead of using the sum function, what you want to use is the aggregate function. So the aggregate function tells analysis services to use, basically that we're going to use server aggregates for analysis services. This tells it that we want the analysis server to compute the actual value. Let's go ahead and set the format here. And now we do a little formatting so you can see this a little easier. So instead of, whoops, aggregate. Sorry, I misspelled it there. So the aggregate function there will tell analysis services that we want it to compute the aggregate. So when we see the average sales amount, you'll see these numbers are a lot smaller. So instead of just adding them up and subtotaling them, we're actually asking analysis services to compute the aggregate values, and then it's going to be returned. Now there are some limitations with that. So if you're doing things like, for example, we can't resort the data because we don't know how to recompute the aggregate values or regroup the data. But if you are using analysis services with non-additive measures, you will want to take note of the aggregate function there. We'll switch back to the slide. So hopefully you got a chance to see, this is the summary from from previous deck, but you got a chance to see some tips and tricks for reporting services, using reporting services with analysis services, using reporting services with report builder models, integration services packages, data mining, some of the data sources that you might not be familiar with. So some additional resources for you: the TechNet forum, there's a great SQL Server site up on TechNet, the MSDN Developer Center, the forums, we're always answering questions on the forums, and then a link to my blog is down there at the bottom. So we've got about 5 or 10 minutes for questions, so I'll turn it back to Tracy, and she can tell you about asking questions.
Okay, and thanks, Brian. Remember, for more information, you can print a PDF of today's session. To do that, just go to the File menu in your navigation bar. We will be getting to questions shortly. Go ahead and feel free to submit those. We'll also be posting a survey here in just a moment. We do appreciate any feedback. And for any previously recorded or upcoming webcasts, you can go to Microsoft.com/webcasts. Also, if you have any webcast content ideas, you can visit this following link here. Today's webcast was presented using Microsoft Office Live Meeting. To get a free 14-day trial, you can visit this following link here. And for filling out that survey today, we do give you a bit of an incentive. You're automatically entered in to win this 40 gigabyte MP3 Windows Media Player. And I'll go ahead and get you down to the survey. And I'll hand it back over to Brian. He can finish up with your questions.
Okay. So we'll go ahead. Got a couple questions in the queue, and I'll try to get to as many as possible. The first question is, can you filter the data on reporting services from integration services? The answer is yes. The integration services data provider doesn't support parameterization. However, you can use what are called data set filters in the report. So you could filter out the date basically after the package is executed and the data is returned. So you're filtering it post package execution. So there's a question about adding network services and account and security. Yes, there will be an article about the security aspects of using the package provider and some tips there around using the SSIS package. How do I open the SQL Server Reporting Services homepage from SQL Server 2005? So I think the question is about some resources for SQL Server 2000 reporting services. If you go up to www.microsoft.com/SQL/reporting, and there's a link to a prior version of SQL Server. There's also a link off of the main SQL Server page to prior version. So you can click there. There's resources, there's downloads, there's getting old versions of the older versions of the product basically available there. Question about SP1 availability. I did mention SP1 for Reporting Services 2005 is coming out. Now, Reporting Services 2005 will have service packs along with the rest of 2005, all of the relational database and analysis services. I actually can't tell you when it's coming out yet. I can tell you to stay tuned. That it's not going to be a long time, but the marketing guys will get mad at me when if I give you a date yet. So, but I promise it won't be a long time till SP1 is available. Can you show the parameter report in the browser? Does it have the same parameter controls available? I'm not going to show the parameter report in the browser, but you get all the same features. So you get the multi-valued drop-down. There's no technical limit to the number of parameters. There's a sort of realistic limit that you don't want to scroll through 10,000 parameters. It's not very useful. You just get a huge list of parameters. But there's no real theoretical limit. It's a pop-up window when we put the parameter values there. 100 is certainly possible. That was a question about 100. We don't have the sort of accelerator keys where if you type the first character of the parameter value, it'll go down to to that place in the list. So you need to sort of manually scroll down and find the parameter value. Normally, you're going to want to stick to probably 5 to 20 or so parameter values. There was a question about the select all item. One of the things that is changed in SP1 is that we have removed the select all checkbox from the multi-value parameters. Especially for analysis services, what was happening was that people were using the select all when they really wanted the all member. So this was in the case of, for example, traversing a dimension, selecting every member of the dimension. If you know anything about analysis services, you know that that's really not the best way to do it. Really use the select all is a better way to do that. So now you get all products. We've also added the ability to indent the products, to indent based on the member level. So we've got a new calculation that figures out what level this is indented. So if you're using the entire dimension as a parameter, you'll actually get the hierarchical list of values indented correctly. We still don't have the sort of hierarchical navigation where you expand collapse values, but it is a little bit nicer than was in RTM. So a couple questions about the all products parameter value. Question about, is it true that all the functionality of Report Designer is available in SQL Express except database size and number of connections? The version of SQL Server Express Edition that includes reporting services is not available yet. It will be available in that ST1 timeframe that I talked about. It will include reporting services. There are limitations in the functionality. Those are described up on the website, what things are available or not available in the Express Edition. The Express Edition, for example, does not include analysis services. That's only in standard. Express Edition is also limited to local data sources, and there's a couple other limitations. So take a look at the website in the reporting services side and see the differences in the editions. Question, how do you pass external parameters like profile, roles, etc. to the report? So a couple ways to, if you want to drive the report externally. The sort of easiest way is to use URL parameters if you're viewing something on the web. So if you're viewing on the web, you can use something called URL access and pass name value parameters to the report. Now specifically something like profile, roles, etc., you're going to want to be careful there, because as soon as you allow them to be parameterized, that means users will be able to pick those values, which is generally not what you want if you're some sort of security mechanism. Instead, what you'll want to do with those is actually go get them in the body of the report. So let's say you had a certain role that was only allowed to see certain data. You would use the user information, the bang user ID, that's available to the report author as just a global value. Take that user ID and go run a query based on the user ID that looks up the roles, for example. And those roles may restrict what the user sees in the report. So that's the sort of more secure way to go about it. Don't let the users type in their own security information, obviously. The other way to supply parameters, and really the best way if you want control over it, is to use the report viewer control. So that's a control that is supplied with Visual Studio 2005, and it handles all of the parameterization. You can programmatically set parameters in that. Question about report builder functionality and replacing competitive tools. Really encourage you to download the Evaluation Edition. Report Builder has gotten a few tweaks in Service Pack 1, not a lot, but it will continue to get better, and we'll be adding more features to Report Builder as future versions come out. So this is just the start for Report Builder. There's lots more to come. The connection string for report models and Report Designer. It's actually up on the slide, so if you go up to the slides and you say File, Print to PDF, I think it's on one of the slides up there, but it is server name equals the report server URL, and server equals report server URL, data source equals path to model. So that is on one of the slides up there, so go ahead and print that out. Does SQL Server Reporting Services support inheritance? I'm not sure in what context the question is. I assume this is for report builder models. Entities in report builder models do support inheritance. You can say that employee is inherited from person, which means that all of the attributes on an employee, all the attributes from person go down to employee. So if you see employee in the model, it'll get all the attributes and relationships of the parent entity of the superclass. Question is, I have a requirement to include charts in the reports, and the limitation, current limitations in formatting of the existing charts. They're looking for a third-party package. The only package I know about right now is called Dundas, a chart for reporting services. We do have a general extensibility model that anyone can extend the charting functionality, just like Dundas. But they are currently the only vendor on the market, so you can go up to, I think it's www.dundasreporting.com and see what their add-in for reporting services does. Question about what's the best path to upgrade 2000 reports to 2005. Can you develop reports for 2005 using Visual Studio 2003? There is a white paper coming out, should be fairly soon, I think in the next couple of weeks, on upgrading, both upgrading server, upgrading reports, sort of everything, preparing for an upgrade, that sort of thing. So you can continue to use SQL Server 2000 reports with 2005. We do support backwards compatibility for 2000, so existing reports will continue to run as they always have. You can also use Visual Studio 2003 to publish to Reporting Services 2005. Now you won't get any of the new features that I showed. You won't get multi-value parameters or end-user sort, but you can continue to use the old report definition and the old web services endpoint. Now as soon as you open a report in Visual Studio 2005 in the new report designer, it will upgrade the report definition language to the new schema. And once you go forward, there's no going back. So those reports are not going to work against 2000 reporting services anymore. Does SQL Server 2005 provide graphs charts functionality that we can create in Excel? If yes, what tool to use? I'm not sure exactly of the functionality you're looking for. If you're looking for Excel pivot charts, you can use analysis services as a source of an Excel pivot chart. You can use the Excel charting functionality and the query designer in Excel, the MS Query designer, to get data out of SQL Server and use the charting in Excel. You can also use, if you're interested specifically in publishing to reporting services, there's a third-party tool that provides native access to chart called Office Writer. If you go up to www.officewriter.com, they've got a great tool there that allows you to author in Excel and then publish those reports to the report server. If you build a chart in reporting services, we currently export that as just as a bitmap. So we don't provide the backing data to actually build a real chart in Excel. We're looking at providing that sort of functionality in a future release. Last question, is there a query limit size? We have queries that are pages and pages long. Is there a number of columns limit? I don't know of any limitations in the query. There shouldn't be. It should be, the size you can fit into a text box, so I don't know, 2 gig or something. So there shouldn't be any limitations on either the size of the query or the number of columns. Now, I think as a best practice, it's generally not the best thing in the world to paste huge amounts of transact SQL into your reports. It's sort of hard to edit, but if that's what you need to do, then so be it. And the last question, also Scott, is does Reporting Services support compiled code behind? So Reporting Services supports compiled code .NET assemblies for custom functions. So you can build a .NET assembly and then reference that from your report and call into that function. There's no sort of code behind from an eventing perspective. We don't expose an eventing model in Reporting Services, but you can call custom .NET assemblies for the custom functions. Well, lots of good questions, and I just want to thank you again for attending the presentation. Hopefully you got some good information out of it, and feel free to go up and download Reporting Services 2005 and give it a try. Thanks.
Okay, and thanks again, Brian. I just want to thank the audience for attending today's presentation. This does conclude today's TechNet webcast. The audience may now disconnect from the audio portion of this presentation.